So I went to school, Northeast Technical Institute, to be a medical assistant. I passed all my classes, which I've never happened before. I actually did my homework.
Just because. I will see you when I get home.
I love the medical field. I just love it. And that's like where I found my passion for like helping people.
One of my patients I saw a couple weeks ago, first time I met them, they were really awesome. And the other day, I got a letter in the mail. It said Emily, medical assistant. And I was like, it's weird. I never got mail at work before. And my patients made me a handmade thank you card.
A lot of our patients are on opiates, and there's a lot of abuse. And I really want to be that person to be able to change the way doctors think, the way nurses think, the way anybody thinks that's like quote unquote like important in the medical field about people who are in recovery and who are currently using drugs, that they're struggling and they're not bad people.
Hi, baby. What are you doing?
And my surgeon, I told him my story and his face was like, what? Like, no.
What are you doing? Who's that?
I was in 9th grade and I was dating a boy, and he took my virginity and he raped me. And I think that made my self-worth even lower. And I didn't think anybody liked me. I didn't think anybody loved me. I didn't think anybody could love me. And that's just like where I just stopped caring about everything and everybody, and I just wanted to suppress that feeling. And from there, my life was, being an IV heroin user, sleeping under bridges in Lowell, Massachusetts. At that time, I chose to be homeless because I didn't want any bills, I didn't want any responsibility. People took care of me, I got my own money, and I got high. That's all I cared about. And, I overdosed 3 times. The first time it was in my parents' house, and all I remember is waking up in the shower, wet because my boyfriend threw me in the shower to wake me up. My mom actually took a picture of me in the hospital, of me, the way I looked, and she sent it to, my dad. I remember the look at my mom's face of like, why did you do this to us again? And I think at that moment, I just saw like the hurt in her eyes of like everything I put them through. And she was like, I can't lose you. For me. And I told my mom, I said, I need help. Please help me. We spent 5 hours that day online, calling detoxes, calling rehabs, talking to my insurance, trying to find the best place. Do I want to go to Florida? Do I want to stay in Mass? Where do I want to go? Do I want to go to California? I found this place in Portland, Maine. It's called Liberty Bay. And the guy told me, he was like, you can come tomorrow. I said, what? That's really fast. He goes, well, do you want to get sober or not? I was like, I do. He goes, so I'll see you tomorrow. But that place and the girls in there saved my life. Having a good group of women is so important because they've been through what you've been through, and you can be honest with each other, you can help each other, and that's just your foundation of your recovery is for me, was my girlfriends. Laughing, saying stupid things, staying up all night, writing step work together, crying together, laughing together, smoking 1,000 butts together, drinking way too many Monsters at 11 o'clock at night and laughing so hard. That's the greatness that you get from recovery. And I haven't had that in 5 years. Not a single good belly laugh in 5 years.
Previously on The Real Housewives of Orange County. I want to go to the senior center with you.
You're pushing me. I don't want you to push me.
Real Housewives of Orange County is what I'm watching right now. And it's fabulous. Yeah, all the drama that I don't have in my life is on my Real Housewives. And I'm really excited to see where my journey takes me and how how I can help other people, and I want to be that nurse in the hospital bed in the ER with that person who comes in withdrawing from heroin or alcoholism, who's struggling, and I can be like, I've been there and I can help you and it's okay and you're safe. Instead of people, you know, like degrading them or calling them names or saying that like there's no help for you. There is help for you, because if I can get sober, anybody can get sober. And I just, you know, moved into an apartment with my boyfriend. We've been together for about a year now, and you know, I pay for my own bills. I got this apartment with my own money. I can buy things for myself now. You know, I bought my first car. I pay my own car payments. I've never been late. Like, it's things like that that's like really like a blessing for me. And I'm not perfect. I don't work a perfect program. But I have tools, and if I have a bad day, I can go to a meeting. If I have a bad day, I can call one of my girlfriends. Like, I have people who are there for me. A lot of people like don't realize that I'm in recovery, and they think that I'm a quote unquote normie, because I am normal. I am a normie. I just use drugs to cover up my feelings. And everybody, you can eat more, you can go shopping more to cover up your feelings, you have sex more to cover up your feelings. There's so many things that people have an addiction to that aren't drugs, that are the same like me. And people don't get that, and it's really frustrating.
Oh, you waiting for Noella? She went to go get my prescription. My name is Denise Altivator, and I live here at Pleasant Point Reservation, call it Seabayig. And I've lived here most of my life, with the exception of the years I was in foster care. My daughter was one of the first ones to be put on opioids in this community, back when OxyContin came on the market, and Purdue Pharmaceuticals marketed it as a cure-all, and offered doctors all these incentives to put people on it. We had a doctor here that put a lot of people on it. The opioids stopped coming from the clinic. The heroin came in floods. People could still buy opiates on the street, but they were way more expensive than heroin. Here in this area, we didn't have a methadone clinic, and we didn't have Suboxone. You had to go all the way to Bangor. I know at one time we had a death every single week for as long as I could remember, because when we have a death here, everything stops. You don't hold council meetings, committee meetings, you don't hold any kind of gathering. Everything stops. And for the longest time, we couldn't have meetings because there was a death every single week. I'm just going to be around the neighborhood with these guys for a little while.
Okay.
Okay?
I didn't sleep good last night, so I'm taking a nap.
It's going to take a nap? Okay. Love you. My daughter, Holly, was out on the streets using for decades. She ended up in jail and found out she was pregnant when she was in jail. Bangor was the only place with the neonatal unit that could handle it. She called us crying, saying the state is here and they're taking Gavin. So my husband and I flew to Bangor. We barged into the meeting, and I said, I want to know what's going on. You have no authority, you have no right to touch my grandson, and I'm taking him out of here, and you're not touching him. When I was 7 years old, my 5 sisters and I, the state came in 2 station wagons and took us out of our home. My mother wasn't home, she was grocery shopping, and they put all our stuff in garbage bags. I remember they had 2 station wagons, and they just took us. They didn't tell us why. They didn't talk to us. They weren't nice to us. And my whole world was disappearing. And even though my mother was a bottomed out alcoholic, there was still that safety that she was my mother. So to be taken and put in a foster home where these people did unspeakable things to us. And so the thought of the state touching my grandson was hideous to me and was going to be over my dead body. It just was not going to, I was not going to allow it to happen. I quit drinking when I was 28 years old. But most of my life was like a dead zone. My oldest son, Brian, he must have been about 8 or 9 years old. And I remember him coming in my room and he wanted to kiss me goodnight. And I pushed him away and yelled at him and told him to go to bed. And I'll never forget the look on that little boy's face of having his mom just pushing him away. When you add up all the traumas, with me, my grandfather was in a boarding school. My mom was abused. I abused my children. My children can't parent, don't know how to parent their children. And I had a couple of friends that I met really quick. I mean, just imagine, we have this whole historical trauma all over this country of how this country was built off the deaths and the theft of Native people and the slavery of Black people. Those feelings of hopelessness and helplessness and anger just keep getting carried down, on and on and on. This word, intergenerational trauma, is a word that was developed by a Native woman. What I see, especially since I've been working with youth and doing training with youth, they don't have a context of why their lives are the way that they are. They don't have an understanding of why their parent isn't able to show them affection and love, or why their parent is angry all the time. I have to have done something wrong to be treated this way. Otherwise, I don't see any reason why I'm being treated like this. Because they don't understand what their generations of families have been through and what's been passed down. And what that trauma does to you is it takes away that feeling of belonging somewhere.
Just out of curiosity, what brings people back? Like, why have you and your family stayed?
The reservation is not a good place to live, and it's not a good place to raise your kids, but it's impossible to leave. Statistically, growing up on a reservation, your rates of being abusing substances, being incarcerated, committing suicide are increased just because you're raised on a reservation, because the poverty and the despair is so huge, and that's what they see, and that's what they live with every day. My grandson has just recently learned why his mother never raised him. He never knew why. He never understood. He never knew what was wrong with him, that he didn't have a dad and he didn't have a mom. So to give him that context and to give him that support and that understanding helps him to figure out who he is. And then trying to be a grandparent to him in a way that I don't pass that trauma down to him.
When I talk about Percocets feeling like home, I don't know how to explain it, but just like putting that into my system made me feel okay. Like I could relax and take a deep breath, and there wasn't racing thoughts and things that I couldn't control in my head. Like it was just like a moment of, even if it's only a moment, where everything just kind of slows down for a second. I started drinking when I was 12, and I drank like any other high schooler, or I thought did when I was 14, 15, 16, but I like functioned fairly normally. I got good grades, I was in honors, high honors, I was captain of my soccer team, I was class president for a year, like all these things that I could say like I'm okay, I'm doing well, but on the inside, I was constantly just like trying to feel okay. I got sexually abused or molested when I was a child, and I never told anybody about it because I didn't, when you're a child, you don't know what's okay and what's not, and it's just like really confusing. Basically, I had an anxiety attack, a panic attack. Like I couldn't get out of my bed for days, and I just like broke down. I had like a mental breakdown, and I ended up coming home. I quit school. I started working in restaurants, and I had started a new relationship, and that was kind of our thing. Was like we'd work together, we'd go home, and we'd get high, and we still did like everyday normal things. Like we'd still go apple picking in the fall. I tried like intensive outpatient programs, I tried going to support groups, and for whatever reason it just wasn't sticking. I got arrested again for shoplifting because I couldn't support my needs, my habits, and I would steal like groceries to make sure she had what she needed. In the meantime, I'm still breastfeeding, like because that's what's the best thing for my baby is to breastfeed, yet she's getting whatever I'm doing through the milk, and you know, I just like rationalize and make those things okay, even though they're not necessarily okay, but I was doing the best I could with what I had in the situation that I was in. And after they had the funeral for my grandfather, my grandmother was given money to like help out. And I went into her home that I'd always been allowed in, that's like my home, and I stole $300 out of her purse. And I remember that day like so vividly because, you know, as I'm walking out of her home, I'm telling myself, put that back. That money is not yours, put it back. But the reality is that I have a little girl to take care of and I have to get to work and I'm going to be sick. I'd wake up and look in the mirror and just like despise the woman that I was looking at, not feeling any worth, not seeing any hope, and just feeling defeated. Like this was how I was going to live the rest of my life, and I was just going to manage and it was going to be okay, and you know, I'm going to die with this disease, and you know, everybody else will be fine without me. When I got out, my choice was I'm gonna do it one more time because this is what I know. And I just stayed sober for like 4 or 5 days, and like I deserve like a one more time. And this is how like completely powerless I am over substance use disorder. A day or two into being home, my boyfriend walked in on me in the bathroom, and I had my stuff all set up and ready to use again, and he was just like, "Are you kidding me?" You know, and like that moment I saw myself from his perspective, and I realized how absolutely powerless I am. And 3 or 4 days after that, I started a intensive outpatient program, Gray Street. And it was May 5th of 2016. And since that day, I haven't found it necessary to pick up a drink or a drug. Like the first time when I was pregnant, I found a support group of women. And since then I've been called back to that. It's a new moms program that has women that have either just had their child or they're carrying their child. One of the hardest things about being in recovery for me is seeing women who have their children taken away. I feel like a lot of women who are incarcerated right now are in there because of substance use disorder, and they get out and they haven't learned any tools in jail of like how to cope with everyday life. Like, you know, we just tend to give more punishment instead of giving these women what they need, and that's love. What was your favorite part of the day?
Bus.
The bus. What else besides the bus?
Bus.
The bus. The bus both times. On the way there and the way back. You know, I always hear like, we're gonna love you until you love yourself. And I think that has a lot of power in it, because most of these women don't know how to love themselves. They don't know how to love other people, and they don't know how to take care of their basic needs. So when you put them in a community or in an environment where other people are able to love themselves but show them some love, I think that's probably one of the biggest and most important tools.